we've got coming up next a gentleman for all seasons. That's what I like to call Aaron Myers, who is the executive director of the commission, the District of Columbia's Commission on Arts and Humanities. He's been in that position for a few months now, but he's been in and out and around that office for quite some time. And welcome, Aaron. We've been trying to get Aaron on for a couple of months. It has worked. This is a gentleman, as I said, a man for all seasons. He is choir director at Covenant Baptist Church. He's a jazz singer, which is another thing that's important to us in terms of when we talk about the Jazz Fest. And I let him know, I said, did I see you being promoted as singing at Mr. Henry's on Capitol Hill 2 weeks ago? He said yes, and he does that once a month. But we're here to talk about the commission. And welcome and congratulations on being appointed to the executive director of that office. Tell us a little bit about the commission and what you all are about for the arts and all the creative people in our town.
Well, first of all, thank you. And I want to, of course, encourage the viewers to hit their newsstands and pick up a physical copy of the Informer or check out the digital copy edition as well. I view the Informer as a vital voice for what we have here in Washington. And so I encourage everyone just to thank you for your support, but to continue supporting the Informer as much as possible. And I am Aaron Myers, I'm the Executive Director of the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. And the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities is your state art agency. We are funded both nationally by the National Endowment of the Arts, as well as we have a dedicated tax source from our sales tax in Washington, D.C. And so our budget is around, this upcoming budget is around $51 million. And the art that you see in Washington, D.C., ranging from the murals on the sides of buildings to the theater to live music events, festivals, film, the humanities, it's in our purview. And these are things that we grant, we support. We create workshops to instruct on how to strengthen the grantees' accessibility and their ability also to get their art out to the people. We have our commissioners are appointed by the mayor with also advice and consent from the council to 3-year terms. And in years past, we've had commissioners that represented the needs and wants of particular wards. And so we do have good ward representation on the commission. We are anticipating 4 more commissioners to join us. Right now, currently we have 10 commissioners. Reggie Van Lee is our chairperson. And as executive director of the commission, we have several grant programs. And I grabbed my quick guide to help me because I didn't want to miss anything out. I wanted this opportunity for your
very good
for your audience to really understand the full scope and plethora of what we grant. Our grants range from $5,000 to almost $500,000. Last year alone, this agency doled out over 1,400 grants, individual and project-based grants to the Washington, D.C. community. I've got to give a real big shout out to our staff because not only with the way they pivoted during COVID to offer grants and relief dollars to artists, for many artists, the money they received from the commission during the pandemic was the only money they may have received as far as relief and extra dollars. Because of just the extreme backload. I've got to give a shout out to DOES, Dr. Unique Morris Hughes, who also did a great job of supporting creatives during the pandemic. But some of the grants we deal with, we have our Arts and Humanities education project grants. The max award for that is $30,000. And that really deals with in and out of school time arts and humanity projects for pre-K through 12 settings. We have our Arts and Humanities Fellowship grants. Those are $10,000. Those are for individuals So you'll find many individual grants that usually deals with awards to individuals whose artistic excellence it significantly contributes to the DC as a world-class cultural capital. And those are really GOS, the things that you can take care of your business, I would say. East Arts, and that is for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, headquartered in the Northeast or the Southeast quadrant of Washington, D.C., and the max awards for those are $35,000. We have capital projects, and formerly that was our facilities and building grants. And so we have a new large cap grant that the council just issued, and many probably saw on the paper about the discussions and the things that went on between the council and this agency regarding that. Our facilities and building and relief grants, we're not doing any more. The council has discontinued relief grants from our office and citywide, actually. We have field trip experience grants, general operating support grants, liftoff grants, and this supports capacity building for nonprofits. And that max grant award is $25,000. We have what we call the PEF grant. That's the Project Events and Festival Grants, and that's also for individuals. That the max award for that is $10,000, and for organizations, the same project events and festival grants, that the max award for that is $20,000. And then when we think about public art, quick guide, we have the Art Bank program, and if you see the art behind me, we have that did come from our Art Bank, and a big shout out to Ron, who has worked hard to do that and to curate and to catalog all this. Our art exhibition grant, civic commission grant, Murals DC for individuals, public art building communities, and that's for individuals and for organizations, juried exhibition grants, as well as a Color the Curb school safety program. And that's very important. Lauren Glover has really worked hard to really shepherd that program. And that's a partnership between our office and the District of Department of Transportation, DDOT, and District of Columbia Public Schools, DCPS. So those are grants, and our commissioners really are the chief defenders and protectors of the arts in Washington, D.C. And as someone who's been an advocate, an artist, sitting in this position gives me an opportunity to educate my fellow directors and educate policymakers on language and on the needs of the arts community, the creative community. It's my idea that this should be the creative capital of the country. And this is the district of creators. And so it's my goal in this particular seat and role over the next 2 to 3 years for us to be able to really flush out and really quantify what the arts look like. I can break news on this program in 2 fronts.
Okay, let's go for it.
So the first thing is that I signed paperwork the other day for DC to be a part of the cohort for the music census. And we are doing a music census officially here in Washington, D.C. to quantify what the music ecosystem from Washington, ranging from musicians to venues, everyone a part of the music ecosystem, we're asking to be a part of this census. We're joining a cohort that's also being joined by Baltimore. So for the first time, we'll be able to see from Baltimore to Washington, D.C., what does music look like?
Wonderful.
Which is wonderful. But the breaking news is that not only will we be doing it for music, after the music census is done, we'll then go into theater. And we'll go from theater into dance. And we'll go from dance to film and television. And from film and television, we'll go into public art, which will include design, photography, and art. We'll go from there to the humanities, and then we'll wrap up with fashion. And over the course of the next 2 years, it's my goal for us to have a real understanding of what art looks like from a quantifiable data set in Washington, D.C. And we will learn that yes, DC is a federal city. Yes, governmental services is a big engine for the tax revenue in Washington, D.C. But it's my goal to prove that the creative community is just as big as an agency to be contended with here in Washington, D.C. And it's my goal to be able to pivot and to redirect funds to support the industry and to make sure this is a good place to do business from a creative standpoint. I want everybody to get ready. It's going to happen. The second thing I can break news for, just a few hours ago, we listed on our website um, the we are hiring a DEI position for the district for the commission, and this DEI person will not only be internally looking at the meeting the DEI needs of the task force that was set forth by the commission with the 44 action items that they identified, but we'll be looking from a DEI standpoint. What is art looking like in the district? How diverse are our galleries? How diverse are the board of directors of these
Mm-hmm.
organizations? How diverse are the programming? How diverse are the audiences that the art is meant to reach? We're going to be looking and seeing how equitable our art scene is here in Washington, and we're going to do our best so that when those who come to us for grants and they need money to ensure that if you're going to get this particular bread, that you have plans. And we want to see what those actionable plans are to make sure things from a diversity lens are equitable and inclusive.
You have said so much that piqued my interest, but also reminded me of things. I'm a native Washingtonian, and I remember being able to go on field trips, engage in after school programs that were free. That were free. At my school, I was in elementary school at LaSalle Elementary in Riggs Park. And at the end of the school day, the cafeteria actually became a place for after school activities. Some of it was art, Brownie Troop met there, games, but it was a place where people actually interacted. I remember going to plays that were being offered through DC Public Schools on Saturdays. They were either at Roosevelt High School Auditorium or over at Ira Aldrich, over
Hmm.
at Howard
Okay.
University. They were 50
Yeah.
cents. My mother took my sister and I. And when you talk about the things that your office is funding, a lot of people may not be old enough to remember we had those things in the district that were available, but things, for lack of a better term, broke down and were taken away, like music programs. A lot of different things were no longer being made available for free through the public school system, that I feel that the commission has been trying to pick up the slack by making these things available to all communities. And I think it's also quite interesting when you talk about theaters, because DC has a lot of theater companies. It's not just the big
The
ones.
second amount of theater seats in the nation outside of New York is in Washington, D.C.
And you see the big ones, and this is no offense, no disparagement towards our larger theater companies, but they also need support too.
Yes,
They are also
everyone.
run by boards.
It's an ecosystem, and there's a misconception. There's a misconception that myself, or maybe the commissioners, we have a vendetta against large organizations or large. That is no. That could be. There, it could not be further from the truth. We have a creative ecosystem, and there is a feeder program, and you must have those larger organizations, those larger theaters, and some call them anchor organizations, anchor theaters. They must have the proper support. They must be uplifted because they serve a vital role and purpose. Just as you have those smaller, more neighborhood organizations and theaters that are cultivating three things: artists, they're
Yes,
cultivating audiences, and they're cultivating artisans. Okay, if you don't have these, neighborhood, these black boxes, these smaller groups and companies, where would some of the larger and regional spaces get good audiences, appreciative audiences? How will they know to appreciate or show up? Artisans, those who work to support the work of the theater, and the artists. It's
that's right.
important that each part of this ecosystem is supported. But to your point, and I think this is a rallying cry that should be the rallying cry of every district resident. We should have fully funded art programs in every school. It
Thank
should
you.
not be an option. It should not be to the principal's discretion. It should be, and I requested a meeting with the chancellor to discuss this. We've not gotten the meeting yet, but I have requested the meeting with the chancellor. I do speak to all of those education activists and those in the community, art activists. You can't have a neighborhood theater unless we start to instill into our youth the importance of the arts as expression, as a tool to get out frustration, as a tool to speak truth to power. And if we don't do that, we're going to continue to lose our youth and young people in violent ways. I mean, I would rather my our youth to pick up instruments versus guns. I would rather people complain about sometimes either truancy or the actions and attitudes of young people on the metro after school. It would be great if after school they could be going to theater programs or art
That's
programs or
right.
someone fostering. If you're not giving them the option, and I think that when we decided to start, investing more money into resource officers and trying to corral a drug pandemic that had been somewhat implemented by the federal government, so on and so forth. I think that when we decided to put money closer to that versus doubling down and ensuring that these programs, especially regarding the arts, were not funded as they needed to be, or seemed to be optional, we saw a decline, and we will continue to see a decline
Yeah.
unless that changes. And there are ways for that to happen. I mean, the public could demand that the council create a line item in the budget that could not be moved either way, so that all this money goes to ensure that public schools in Washington have fully funded art programs. They could do it. That is something that the public could demand from their representatives. But with what the commission has been tasked to do, the money that we have to give out in grants, it is our commitment, and it is the focus of the commissioners to ensure that we're doing so equitably. But as an artist and someone who's been an activist, I can tell you what the commission has been funding has been band-aids, because we do not have a strong and a quantifiable industry, and it's not the easiest place to do business for creatives in Washington, D.C. And I'm thankful to people. I know Sonny Sumter is going to be on the program. I'm thankful for organizations like DC Jazz Festival,
Yeah.
Against the Arts Center. I think of what David Yarborough has done with the Washington Jazz Arts Institute. I think about what Herb Scott has done with the Capitol Hill Jazz Foundation. I think of what all these people have done trying to make up for the shortfall of the lack of industry driven and corralling that's been intentionally done by the government. Or, there are entities that are supposed to be advocating for creatives. The Chamber of Commerce, for instance. The chamber
Yeah.
has not really been advocating for the creative spaces here in Washington, D.C. DC Economic Partnership. They've not been really advocating. Now you have a great champion in Angie Gates at Events DC. She's been advocating, but I'll never forget my career was able to really be elevated because I had support from people like Sonny Sumter and the DC Jazz Festival. And we're fortunate that we have somebody who understands artist speak, artist language, understands the business and how to curate, produce, and to present artists that are DC based in a way where it can help their career. Because as these artists, as their careers are elevated, it elevates the profile of Washington, DC. And
That's
that's the
right.
goal, that as we offer grants to our the constituents, and our grantees are successful, that brings business, it brings eyes, it brings support and resources right back here to the District of Columbia, and the district benefits when we're
Well,
able to
thank
do
you.
this in the right way.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Thank you, Erin. I'm glad you mentioned Sunny, because we're ready to bring her on right now, because it's a wonderful segue
Oh,
for
wonderful.
us to get into talking about DC Jazz Fest. And it's been going on. I think a lot of people
Yes,
think it's all just centered around Labor Day weekend.
was year
And
round.
you're right. It's a year-round event. It's a global event. It's a multi-generational event, and we're so happy that Sunny is going to be with us today.